everybody, it's John, your Indian Cine-MANIAC, with another 10ish-minute review from the viewer choice poll. Before I get to that, I want to acknowledge something that I did not know. So, if you watched my musical number review that I did, one of the films I talked about that I raved about the song was Dil de Takne Do. Love that song, love that video, just loved it. Well, Wolverina Pagan, who is someone who is a fan of the show and has been so helpful in a lot of the Indian films that we've been watching, let me know, I did not know this, that Priyanka Chopra and Farhan Akhtar do their own singing in that. I thought everybody got their voices dubbed. Their voices are fantastic. So thanks for pointing that out. It makes me like that song even more. Now, the film I am reviewing on this episode is not off the latest viewer choice poll that I did. It's actually off the original. If you remember back, I mean, it was months ago, we said, sell us on the film you want us to watch. So you had to give us a sales pitch. And then based on that pitch, we picked the movie. Well, one of the films that were chosen was Raman Raghav 2.0 from 2016. The problem was I couldn't see it anywhere. So Wolverina Pagan was able to give me access to an English dubbed version recently. So I watched it. And this film originally was recommended by wandering.filmaker. Wandering.filmaker. Pretty appropriate name, don't you think, for a movie review show? Yes. This was their pitch for Raman Raghav 2.0. This is not a typical thriller where murder happens and police are finding the killer. It's, of course, about the killings, also about the relationship between fathers and sons, also between police and criminals. It went to Cannes Directors Fortnight 2016. So he's right about that. So the film I'm reviewing is Raman Raghav 2.0 from 2016. It's directed by Anurag Kashyap, who directed some episodes of Sacred Games, the film Ugly, and that film is what this film reminds me of that film. And he also directed Gangs of Wassypur. It stars Nawazuddin Siddiqui, who I have become a big fan of. Gangs of Wassypur, Sacred Games, where he was outstanding, in The Lunchbox. Vicky Kaushal, URI The Surgical Strike, very different character there. Sadar Udham and Donkey. Sobhita Dhulipala and Anuschka Sawhney. Those actresses I have not seen in anything. So this story is based on a serial killer from the 60s who was labeled as Jack the Ripper of India. Now, I never heard of this guy, but over a 3-year period, he went on a killing spree from 1965 till 1968. There was a gap in between where he killed up to 19 people. They finally caught him, and he was sentenced to death, but due to mental illness, wow, what a shocker. He got life in prison. He died in 1995. There was a 70-minute feature film titled Raman Raghav, A City, a Killer, which was directed by Sriram Raghavan. So, and this film was originally going to be a bio set in that time period, but due to their incredibly small budget, the director felt like we couldn't shoot in that time period. So he updated it. Now, he made the point of saying that it was not about the original Raman. Okay, the director made that point. But this was the story. The story is about a guy, Raman, who is a serial killer. And the film is the journey of that character and a cop that and I am a little confused on this. His name, I don't think his name was really Raghav. I think that's what they called him in this film. The serial killer did, harkening back to the original serial killer. But he was a cop that at the beginning you meet him and he's clean shaven in a police uniform and looks very clean cut. Well, then you find out this guy is just as bad, I would say, if not worse, than the serial killer. Um, and it's how their paths cross and how and there's going to be spoilers here, okay? So if you have not seen this film, you don't want to watch this. And there's no spoilers. Like, I mean, it's a serial killer, so you know the cops trying to get the serial killer. But the ending was a bit of a twist, I have to admit. So this was okay. Here's the best analogy I can give you. You're driving down the highway. As you pass a 12-car pileup, just destruction, death, mangled vehicles, right? Cops all over the place. And as you're driving, you're disgusted. You're like getting sick to your stomach, but you keep looking, right? That's what this film did. This was a disturbing, um, intense, um, downbeat. And I use this term. I don't use the term a lot, but I used it in ugly. It was relentlessly depressing, but you can't take your eyes off this movie at any time. And for me, the reason why I absolutely loved this film was Siddiqui as Raman. I mean, the way he played this serial killer was disturbing. Far worse than some manic, crazy, Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs, or even Hannibal Lecter for that matter. He was amazing in this film, amazing. And Vicky, I liked Vicky's performance because it was flashier than Siddiqui's, but well, I'll get into the performances in a minute. So the thing about the story, and I want to give you some highlights. I mean, it's a serial killer movie, so to say highlights. First of all, the opening credits kind of set up what this movie was going to be like. It was crazy. There were like quick cuts, close ups, real funky music playing in the background. But it kind of, from what I understand, there was also another name for this film called Psycho Raman. And that's what that opening was like. It was psycho. I mean, and it definitely set the tone for the rest of the movie. They divide the movie into chapters, right? And each chapter, from what I understand, is a segment in his mental state, the serial killer, and the cop for that matter, because his journey is just as bad. And at one point, he gives himself up to the police, Raman, and he confesses to these killings that he's done so far. And this is at the beginning of the movie. They sit him down and they're asking him questions. And this is what made it so creepy. He was, first of all, he's got this big scar across his head, right? But he's so calm when he's explaining his killing. Like he's talking about going to the grocery store. So the cops don't believe him because he's just so matter of fact about it. He's not acting crazy. Now they lock him up to teach him a lesson and they beat him up pretty savagely. And you know what was funny about the scene? You know this guy's a killer, right? But as they're beating him up and he is like screaming in pain, you almost feel a little bad for him, for a serial killer. So now he gets out of there and he hasn't eaten. And that's the other thing about this film. They show you sections of Mumbai which are disgusting. Like the poorest part of, I guess, the poorest part of Mumbai, but like the alleys and there's all kinds of animals that are starving, they're all skinny and stuff. And he's just flitting around, blending in. I mean, it fit for his character and it added to his whole persona that, he kind of thrives in a place like that. Um, so then they do this scene, and this was, I thought, the scariest scene in the movie. He connects with his sister, and she's got a little apartment, and she's got a little boy, and eventually he also interacts with her husband, and you can tell that she's a little scared of him. You don't really know why, and that's the other thing about this film. There's not a lot of backstory. You don't know why the cop is a drug-addled, drug addict, or why this guy's a serial killer. Now there are hints, and they come out in this, but so he's terrorizing these three people pretty much. And the conclusion of that scene, and it goes on for a while, she actually says that we can do it. If you want to do it, because she's trying to protect her family. We can do it. We can do it. It is pouring rain outside right now, which fits absolutely perfect with my feeling about this movie. It's just so atmospheric. So she's throwing herself at him, which implies that when they were kids, they were incestuous. Now you correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how I'm reading that. So that sets him off. And as a result, he ends up bashing her head in with this gigantic crowbar and then kills the father. And now the little boy who's been tied up to keep him quiet, he's just, Raman's just eating his food in front of him, explaining what's about to happen. And then the next scene is the cops in the place, and all you see is the kid flipped up on the chair, and his skin is purple. So they've been there for a few days. That scene was terrifying, and he was so, again, he doesn't play it like a psychotic. He's very calm, like he completely understands why he's doing this, and he doesn't understand why other people don't understand it. So that scene was just, oh my god, and that crowbar, this thing is huge. It looks like a broomstick with a big weighted end, and he drags it. So whether it's the floor, whether it's concrete outside, he's dragging it, and it is like scary as hell. Let me say something else about this movie. The violence in this, it's a very violent film, but let me tell you something. They show almost nothing. Like you never see him striking somebody. You see the camera angle is above the body as he comes down. They show a little bit of the aftermath. You see blood or whatever, but there's nothing overtly violent that they show. And I almost think that it makes the violence even worse because your imagination is dictating what you think is probably happening. It's really effective. Because I think if you show that, it might turn some people off, and this way, it's still scary as hell because you're just imagining. Like with the little kid, you never see him kill the little kid. All you see is the body on the chair upside down. It's like, my God, and that's throughout this movie. So I thought that was what a great choice by the director. Um, okay, there is no, I'm not going to do the songs yet. So they introduced the cop. They're investigating, right? And he's doing lines of coke. So right away they're establishing who this guy is. And I'm a little confused on his character because like I said, when you first meet him, he's clean cut, he's wearing a police uniform, clean shaven. And he looks like he's going to be the hero of the film, trying to capture the serial killer. No, he's as bad if not worse. And when you see him doing coke, he can't sleep. He's always wearing sunglasses because he's wiped out because he's not sleeping. He's got a bad relationship with his father, which they deal with. But anyway, and I'm not giving the story. I'm not giving a play by play because you guys don't like that. But then there's this thing that he does. So the cop is in his place, and I don't know whatever he was doing, and Raman is across the street, And he does this. He does this thing where he's looking through imaginary binoculars. And that happens a lot in this film. And it is very creepy. That's what I mean. This guy, oh my God, the performance was so good. And after seeing him like in Sacred Games, he was so different. Um, but this was like, he was so effective. And that, they want now, the cop has a girlfriend, not even a girlfriend, someone he sleeps with. He met her in a club. That's where the first song happens. And um, they've been together, and she's had a couple of abortions. And this is how you know who this guy is. She talks about, well, what would happen if I get pregnant? And I wrote this down. I want to make sure I get this right. Uh, he says to her, have the baby or kill it. I don't care. That's his answer to that, right? And here's the other thing about this film. There's nobody good in this film. I mean, even Simi, who you have some empathy for, he implies that, because he brings a girl back to the place and screws her in Simi's place, right? Not in front of her, but with Simi in the room. Well, he also implies that she goes to Dubai like almost like she's a prostitute, which I don't know if she is or not, but that's the impression they get. So there's not any sympathetic characters in this film. Maybe the one girl at the end who gets killed, the one, her name was, oh, I can't remember the name. What was her name? I don't have it, but she's the one that he brings her to Simi's apartment and pretty much rapes her. I mean, it was an awful scene. He's very misogynistic. Now, a lot of these movies we talk about how misogynistic some of the characters are, and sometimes I agree, sometimes I don't. The cop is misogynistic. I mean, he's brutal to these women. He pulls guns on them. He slaps them around. He accidentally kills Simi by knocking her down, and she hits her head. Um, so he was it's sad. Well, not sad, but it's amazing as you watch this film that you have a little more, how do I want to say this? You don't have sympathy. That's not the right word. But out of the two characters, Raman is the more likable character. Isn't that strange? Because he's a serial killer and he's brutal and he does it uh, without rhyme or reason, or we think. The cop is just, I mean, this is a cop. He's supposed to be protecting us, right? No, he's a junkie. In fact, he kills one of his drug dealers for no apparent reason, and then the other drug dealer gets his gun and could kill him and doesn't, and says, "I hate effing junkies," and walks out. And the cop's in a fetal position on the floor crying. That's how pathetic this guy was. Um, so a few other things about the film. There are, and this is why. Well, okay, I'm going to performances. I don't want to do that yet. So anyway, so the film ends basically after more murders happen. Raman turns himself back in, and he wants to talk to Raghav alone. And the conclusion of the film is the reason why Raman, and what Raman does is he explains very calmly about why he does this, and it makes all kinds of sense the way he's saying it. Now he says, now that I've seen what you do, I know I can go. I can have the noose because I know someone else will take over for me. So he knows that the cop is now going to be a serial killer. And the last scene is he goes to the witness's house who saw him kill Simi, and it's a great scene. He gets her out of the house using a phone. She opens the door. She goes to close it. He comes bombing through. And the last scene is he's closing the door and you hear her screaming. Well, the ending is he now becomes a serial killer. So I have to say, again, because it's based on a true story, I'll give the story a 4. Okay. I'll give the story a 4. I enjoyed it. It was different. It was a different kind of serial killer movie, but I really enjoyed it. And I did a little research on the original story too. And that guy, I mean, I got a picture of him. He's pretty creepy. But he does look a little like Siddiqui. So kudos to that casting. Now the performances. Look, I'm going to give the performances a 5. And do I think everybody in the cast was a 5? No, but Siddiqui was a 5. His performance was unbelievably good. And here's why I really strongly give it a 5. There were stretches in this film, like I mean 10 to 15 minutes, where there's no dialogue. And everything is in his face and in Vicky's face. Now Vicky was going up and down, and he's manic, and then he's not. He's trying to keep it together. That's not what Siddiqui did. Siddiqui, everything was in his eyes, and his eyes said everything without speaking a word. So for that reason, I'm going to give him a 5, because it really was. And listen, Silence of the Lambs. I think what Anthony Hopkins did with that character, because there was a movie called Manhunter where Brian Cox played the same character, and it was a completely different interpretation. Hannibal Lecter, played by Hopkins, was just a great role. Well, I put that up there with that. That's how good I think this was. I think it was an amazing thing. Now the music, there was only like two musical numbers, we'll call them, but they weren't like Bollywood. Let's do a musical number. They were, excuse me, they were in a club, right? So it fit with the song. It fit with the reason to have the song. In fact, the first song in the club, where you meet the cop and he's hitting on somebody, the song is "You're So Filthy," which fit perfectly with this film. Um, but the overall music, I loved it because it just added to the psychoticness of this film. It was disturbing music. There were times when it was almost like there was a romance going on, and it wasn't. It was the complete opposite. But that's what the music was. So the music was a little psychotic too. So I love the music. I'm going to give the music a 4. Uh, overall, overall, even though if you were to average out my ratings, it's probably a 4. I'm going to give it a 5 because it was just so. I couldn't stop thinking about it after I watched it. It was that. It was that like disturbing for me. And I'm just overwhelmed by the performance. It was just Siddiqui was so good in this, and every mannerism, the way he sat, the way he calmly talked about it, the way he carried that crowbar around all over the place. So I'm sorry, wandering filmmaker, that I didn't get to this sooner, but I had no way to watch it. So thank you again, Wolverina, for getting me access to this, because I loved this film. So thank you for that. Okay. Okay, the next film off my list. And by the way, this is my list. Okay, you see all those movies? And by the way, some of them aren't even available for me to watch. So I got a long list to go. And here's the next film I'm going to watch. I was going to watch Barjarangi Bahan. I think that's how I pronounce it, Bahan. Salman Khan. But I can't watch it with English subtitles. And everything on YouTube is like an hour and 45 minutes. And I think the film is over 2 hours. So I'm not going to be able to watch that yet. And a lot of you recommended that. They said it's very heartfelt. So the film I'm going to watch next is Udan. And that's a film that even prior to the poll, some of you have recommended I watch that in the comment section. So that's the next film I'm going to do, the next 10ish-minute review. Okay. So thank you for watching once again. I appreciate it as always. Let me know what you think about my thoughts or your thoughts on this film in the comment section. And I know you see that shirt back there. In June, we've got the cricket coming up, and June 5th, I think it is. I'm going to make sure I watch that. Again, people have asked me to do a reaction video. I don't know. Does that excite you, watching me watch cricket? I don't know about that, but maybe I'll do like a 5-minute thing or something where I just sit there and watch it and see whatever. I just want them to hit sixers. That's all. I want them to hit sixers all night. Anyway, that's it. Thank you again for watching. We'll talk to you soon with another 10ish-minute review. Thanks for watching.